Right. So thank you all for joining us today for a discussion on where the jobs are outside of BigLaw. I'm Amy Goldstein, Chair of Training Programs for the Legal Mentor Network, and I'm thrilled to be joined by Adriana Dulick, Nadine Etienne Basil, and Francis Sullivan as panelists, and Kiana Fordham-Pilson as our moderator. For those of you who aren't familiar, the Legal Mentor Network is a new nonprofit organization focused on providing free legal mentoring to law students and junior attorneys. You can find information not only about the organization, but also about how to sign up as a mentee or a mentor on our website, legalmentornetwork.org. As we go through and the panelists are talking, absolutely feel free to put your questions in the Q&A. We will try and address them when possible during the presentation, but if we don't have time, don't worry, we are leaving time at the end to get your questions answered. And with that, I am going to turn it over to our moderator, Kiana, and we will take it from there. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Amy. Okay, so today you're going to hear from panelists who have longstanding careers in-house, in government, and in fintech, and I might have my own solo practice. So I think the first question I want to ask the panelists is, what do you enjoy most about your job or even your career? For me, in my solo practice, I really enjoy the connection with clients. And I didn't feel like I had that in BigLaw, because in BigLaw, partners manage and filter your interactions with clients. But in my practice, I'm able to work directly with clients and work with entrepreneurs and help support and grow their businesses from a legal side. So I want to open up to the panelists to see what they enjoy most about their careers.
I'm happy to follow up with that. Hi, everyone. My name is Nadine Etienne Basil, and I'm currently at JP Morgan Chase & Co. I work within the broker-dealer side, and I'm client-facing since my clients are our marketing, copyright, and team. And I enjoy working with them on the day-to-day because I have that one-on-one interaction where I can advise them to make sure they're following regulatory guidelines within FINRA and the SEC for marketing, so nothing's unbalanced or misleading. And something I really do enjoy. When I was in BigLaw, I did not have the same one-to-one contact that I have right now. Just to describe my day-to-day, I am on meetings. Sometimes it can be from 9 to 5, and then just following up and doing contracts afterwards. But it's literally a bond that I have with my business people, and I really enjoy it.
And I can follow that up and say that I enjoy being in-house because you get to see the fruits of your own labor. I think if you work in BigLaw or any law firm for that matter, you kind of in and out in that relationship, and you develop policies for them and you give it to them and you hand it over to somebody else and you're gone to another client. Whereby in-house you get to see and enjoy the fruits of your labor. You get to live with the results that you have produced. There's good and bad that come to that, but hopefully more good than bad if you're doing well. And another thing I enjoy is the variety of stuff that I get to do in-house. So to give you a context, I'm the Chief Compliance Officer at Epic Payment Solutions. We are a third-party payment processor, and I get to develop different policies and procedures and maintain them, update them. I get to deal with regulators. We are licensed in certain jurisdictions. We're required to be licensed, and so that inevitably requires filing different reports on a regular basis. Some of them quarterly, some of them. I'm not sure why there's a lot of echo coming up and a lot of noise.
I think, Francis, if you mute your mic, it might be better.
Okay, that's better. So as I was saying, I get to communicate with regulators where we are licensed. That inevitably requires filing certain reports. some of them on a quarterly basis, some of them on an annual basis. I get to communicate with law enforcement because there's certain suspicious active reports we need to file with Vincent and law enforcement. And again, if there are any investigations of fraud or any other kind of illegal activity, I get to work on those investigations with them. I get to communicate with payment schemes because we have to be registered with them to process credit cards. And so that also carries certain exams. I get to communicate with auditors and go through audits on an annual basis. And we go through more than one audit. We go through AML and sanctions compliance audits and PCI DSS, which are data security audits on an annual basis. So there's just literally a sheer variety of things that I get to do on a daily basis is very invigorating and very enjoyable to me.
Y'all are making me jealous. So I'm Frank Sullivan. I'm Deputy Director for the Office of Lawyer Regulation in Wisconsin, which is the equivalent of Bar Council in most states. So I've been in government since, let's just say a long time and leave it at that. And I was in private practice before that, and I enjoyed both of them very much. But I think what I enjoy most about government is that there's always an aspect of public service in it, not just that you're working for the public, but that idea of public service, that idea of the, for us, the people of the state of Wisconsin, that we not only can, but have to make decisions that keep the people's interests in mind and keep the people's interests foremost. And that's very different from being in private practice, at least in my experience, is that we don't always need to win. We need to do what's right. And sometimes those are not the same thing. And sometimes they can be hard to reconcile, especially if you're a litigator who really, really likes to win.
That was really great insight. Okay, so my next question, and a lot of young lawyers have this question, I know. It's, is it impossible to go into big law if you try something else first? How do each of you stay open to new opportunities?
I mean, I guess I can start. I mean, I think it's not impossible, but I'm not sure that I'm the right person to answer it because I actually never ended up going to big law. So the time when I graduated, it was almost right after 9/11, December of 2001. So obviously a lot of law firms were not hiring because everybody was not really, it was a very uncertain time, obviously. And so a lot of people were not sure what's going to happen. There was a lot of shutdowns of airspace and whatnot. So firms are not hiring. And so I had no choice. I couldn't even get into the big law because of that, because they were just not hiring at that time. But, in hindsight, I kind of feel like maybe that was a blessing in disguise because it led me to where I am today, where I found to be very happy. So, I don't think it's impossible. And I think Nadine can probably speak to it more than I can, that if you really are determined to get there, you can get there. But you don't underestimate other opportunities that may be open to you. And don't underestimate the fact that you don't really know what anything is like until you try it. So even though you may be dreaming of big law, you may actually be disappointed. You may end up in big law and be miserable. And so, it isn't end all be all. So, be open to other opportunities because you might just discover that you like something else. So anyway, but I'll turn it over to Nadine because I think she can probably speak more to that.
Thank you. So I have a very, I would say, diverse background. I've worked in small law firms, big law, and I'm in-house currently. And I also agree with the sentiment of keep your options open. You never know what experience you're going to end up really loving. I personally am a big fan of being in-house. I would like to stay in-house. Is because of, as I mentioned before, the connection where I'm the lead attorney. I guide my business and they trust me as if I'm my own personal law firm. And I like that autonomy. And I also work with big law partners. And I'm, again, the boss, asking them to give advice on things that may be outside of my bandwidth or my expertise. but I'm the one, again, engaging with the partners. And it's different from when you're an associate and you're working underneath them, when you're actually the client. And that's something I enjoy. But going into Kiana's first question, I don't believe it's impossible. I really do believe if you have your mindset on something and you network and you leverage the experience that you have, that you can get into BigLaw, you should be in the neighborhood, or I would say the metropolitan demographic where you want to practice. So if you really want to be a BigLaw attorney, for example, in New York City, I would recommend that you move to New York City and just build up that network, go to different bar associations, find alumni if they're living there, so that your name comes front to mind for a specific practice area, since you won't be coming in assumingly in the first, second year associates, you'll be coming in with experience and you're going to be a lateral. And talking to my experience, I graduated actually with Kiana in 2010. And that was the year where big law firms were literally disappearing because of the big financial crisis. And for me, I needed a job, and I ended up going back home to Long Island in a small law firm, but I got really valuable litigation experience. And because of that, I was able to leverage it. And I also had a friend who was at Paul Weiss, who I reached out to, and she forwarded my resume. So your network could be somebody that is either just a classmate that you graduated with, in my case it was, or someone that's already there. So I would say be very open, because you just don't know when that opportunity will present itself, and be ready. So to say, like, this is what I've been doing, this is what I can bring to the table, this is what I know, and to make yourself competitive when you have your foot in the door. And just to reiterate, like, that's, in my opinion, the hardest part, right? To get your foot in the door, which is why networking and programs like this are very important.
To echo what my colleagues have said, there's so many different types of government jobs, and there's many different locations. There's so many different government entities that can potentially employ you. Statement about how market is a very difficult path if you take a government job in a rural county. I think it's just because big law is located in big cities, and it's hard to find that path back. It's not impossible, but it's hard. I think it depends very much on the type of work you do. If you have a specialty that's attractive to big law, I think that's much more useful. I think it's generally, and I know there's a ton of exceptions to this, I think it's generally more difficult to get in if all your experience after a certain point has been criminal litigation. Not impossible, but more challenging, I think. And I think the last thing I'd say is that there's a window as well. And that's true of, I think that's true for all of us. But there's a point in your career when you are extremely attractive because of your skills, because you've begun to build those connections, but you're not too rooted into what you're doing currently. Again, it's not impossible to move from a government job to big law after 15 years of work in government, but it is more difficult because you likely don't have a book of business, and it's likely somewhat more difficult for them to find a slot where you fit. Again, not impossible, but perhaps more challenging. And what I'd say to all of this is that if you think your path involves big law and you start in the government, be very mindful of that. Be very mindful of the networking. Be very mindful of working with your network and your contacts to figure out what big law is looking for. The advantage of government jobs is that there's so many different things you can do and so much diverse experience. They figure out what they want and figure out how you can provide it to them.
That's great. And I'll speak to my own experience. I went into BigLaw coming from a clerkship, and I really enjoyed clerking for a judge. I did it in state court and federal court in New Jersey. And then I went on to private practice. And while I think BigLaw does a very good job of training you how to be a lawyer, the job satisfaction is not that great. And I feel like I've jumped from firm to firm trying to find more support, and ended up started my own practice so I could directly connect with clients in the practice area that I wanted. I didn't want to be solely focused on litigation. I wanted to be able to work on my intellectual property practice and entertainment and employment, and not just be like pigeonholed into working for big institutional clients who, generally is what big law firms have. And we actually have a question, which is relevant to this topic, from Monica. Is a few years in BigLaw helpful in order to gain experience to ultimately go in-house? Would you have felt adequately prepared to go in-house straight from law school?
Well, I mean, I guess I can start and kick that off. It's extremely helpful to get some experience working for a law firm, whether it be big law or small law, before jumping over to going in-house. And actually, most of the companies do not hire straight out of law school for that reason, because there's just not enough resources in-house to train the lawyers. You kind of, once you hire them in-house, you expect them to be able to basically get there and hit the ground running. And so because of that lack of resources. And so it is extremely helpful and recommended. Now, mind you, there are some in the last, I would say, decade or so, things have changed where some big tech companies do hire out of law school. So like Amazon's, Google's of this world potentially will hire because they have, hundreds and hundreds of attorneys. And so they have the resources to train you. So some of them will hire straight out of law school, but I do think that you have some advantage getting, because there's nothing like training that the law firms provide, as Nadine kind of mentioned, and I think you mentioned as well, Kiana. There's just it's unrivaled, and you do get really valuable experience. So I do think that it's a better way, and that's the way I did as well. I worked for a couple of years and for a small law firm before I moved in-house to where I'm at today, almost 2 decades later. So I do think that's usually the preferable route, and I think you'll have more options that way. But if you really want to, you can probably make a jump out of law school as well, as I said, to some of those big tech companies, potentially.
I also agree that it's possible to, if you go through a big company, such as my company, to start in the beginning. Whether or not I personally feel that I had the adequate experience, honestly, I am thankful for path of doing small law firm and big law. So those two experiences made me the attorney I am today. So where I not only have more autonomy and more confidence in what I do, and if I didn't go that route, and again, this is a personal preference, I don't know if I would be as confident to be the leader. So like when I joined for JP Morgan, one of the trainings they had, and they spoke to us like, you have to talk to outside counsel, and they remind us you are the one in charge of your clients. So, and you are the client, so you must be comfortable talking with the partners, knowing that even though there may be like age disparities and experience disparities, that you're the one that's in charge. And for me, I was like, no problem. But I think that helped because of the fact I wasn't coming straight from law school. I was out for about 6 years before I transitioned in-house.
And if I could just address one aspect of that briefly, I think there's a big difference in working for an employer, being part of an employer where law is the focus of the business, versus working for an employer where law is an aspect of the business. And for me, I think starting in a law firm or in an agency that has primarily a legal focus is just so valuable in terms of developing the skills and frankly, the contacts as well. It's much harder to do that when you are working for an employer where, unless they have a very large, very well-developed legal department, where law is an aspect of the business rather than the central part of the business.
Okay, great. So moving along, so we know that law schools offer lots of resources for students who are interested in big law or careers that funnel into big law, like clerkships in the U.S. Attorney's Office. But what resources should young attorneys or any attorneys use if they want to find these jobs that you guys have outside of big law?
I'll jump in on this one. LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn, and I'm so thankful that it started, especially for each time I was doing my job hunts, because it helped me see like where my network, like people I'm connected with, where they're working. And if it's a company I wanted to work at, then I'm going to send you a message. In addition to that, you can also do job alerts and narrow down certain filters. I really think it's best for like both angles, like the market, what's hiring now, because of at least where I live in the tri-state area, they now even put the compensation, so you even know like what the range is or whether or not it will appeal to you if it fits what you're specifically looking for. And also you can use it to network too. If you can find alumni and send messages to them, and it's a way to reach people that you couldn't reach as easily.
And another thing I would add is I'm a big proponent of different associations, and there are many out there available that will allow you to network with people specifically within the specialty that you may be interested in. So one is IAPP, International Association of Privacy Professionals, that focuses on privacy, obviously, and data security. So if you're interested in that specialty, definitely join that association, go to their events. They usually have local in-person events. They have online events, they have conferences that you can go to. There's other associations like Association of Certified Financial Crime Specialists, ACFCS, that focuses on financial crime. There's ACAMS, Association of Certified Anti-Money Laundering Specialists, that focuses on AML compliance and sanctions compliance. There's Women in Payments. Obviously, I'm in payments, so I'm aware of that association. But again, there's literally anything you can think of, Google it, and I'm sure there'll be association associated with it. And that's a great way, as I said, kind of very low-key way to meet people that may be relevant to jobs that you're looking for. So.
It seems like networking is kind of a theme of this networking seminar. In most government jobs are publicly posted. We're different from other employers in that way. But just because a job is publicly posted doesn't mean that it's, how do I put this, actually competitive. You can apply for a government job, get an interview, and then realize that, depending on the agency, you may never have had a chance because that position was wired for somebody else. So it is as important as anywhere else to network if you're interested in an aspect of government law. If you're interested in a DA's office, figure out a way to meet somebody who's practicing there now. A lot of the smaller law schools, I know UW does this as well, government lawyers will teach as adjuncts in the law school. Figure out who they are, talk to them. We're very lucky here because our University of Wisconsin-Madison is in the same, is half a mile from the state capitol. Almost all the state government attorneys in the state practice right here. We're not hard to find. You can find us on LinkedIn. You can find us through your career center. You can find us just by walking around the square at lunchtime and looking for people in somewhat ratty suits. And most of us are mostly happy to talk to you most of the time. We've all been there. We'd like to help you get a head start because we remember the people who helped us get a head start. So reach out, send an email, ask to go to coffee. We love coffee.
And that's actually another great point that I never thought about, but a great point about adjunct professors. There's actually a lot of in-house people that are now adjunct professors. Actually, a great friend of mine who's an entertainment lawyer and was at Miramax, she is now at USC teaching entertainment law. So don't underestimate your professors, either former professors or current if you're still in law school, that may have great connections and can put you in touch with the people in the industry, either at law firms or in-house, and they can network with you and answer questions, have a coffee with you, have a lunch with you, whatever it may be, and put you in touch with the right people.
I also echo the same sentiments. Like, I know many of my friends graduated, went back to Fordham, where I went to for law school, are currently adjuncts. In addition to that, one of my coworkers is actually currently a legal writing professor at Fordham as well. So definitely leverage professors, adjuncts, and at least from my experience, since I have job hop a couple of times, I've always found people warm and welcoming to actually just talk with me, because I'm not, when I approach, I show what I'm interested in, say, I want to learn more about what you're doing. I don't immediately go, can you get me a job? So since I'm having a pretty laid back conversation, most people are willing to spend some time to actually like grab a coffee with me or do a quick Zoom with me. And I know that helped me leverage like every role that I've had, and I'm more than willing to do the same to help someone else.
I love it. So networking is key. And to summarize, you should be networking with alumni on LinkedIn or even your school classmates. Legal and non-legal associations are here to help you. County bar associations, adjunct professors, anyone you find that's interesting online or LinkedIn, wherever you may find them, you should definitely try to reach out and see if they'd be willing to speak with you. So networking is the key to success for sure. Even in my own practice, I recently went to a conference for all the school districts in Texas, because part of my niche practice is representing a school district with their trademark portfolio, because in Texas, football is king here, and everyone needs help with their logos and monetizing them. So I went to a non-legal association trade show essentially, and it was very interesting. So there are lots of areas you can find people to network and business opportunities. So let's move on to your next question. It would be, what would be your advice on how to pivot your career into a new practice area, or to even narrow your practice area? If you started in one, I started in litigation, and now I've narrowed my practice into IP, entertainment and employment, and any related litigation around that, but I've managed to maybe pivot and narrow my focus. So what advice would you have for somebody who wants to do the same?
I can take that because as the panel knows, I did a complete 180 pivot and no longer practice litigation. And now I just do marketing and data privacy. So for me, when I decided that I didn't want to do litigation anymore, I started again with networking, learning more about people in different roles and what their day-to-days were in the data privacy sector. In addition to that, I joined the IAPP to meet more people within that industry. And I took time to get certified for my CIPP. So I'm a certified information privacy professional. And I did all of that to show that I was serious. I wasn't just changing and wishy-washy with my practice area. And this was now about 10 years within my career when I decided I wanted to do this pivot. So I knew it wouldn't be easy. It took time for me. And another thing that I did, I found like also super helpful is I started also, and I was able to do this through my company, When I did pro bono cases, I purposely focused on privacy-related ones where I worked with nonprofits, drafted out privacy policies underneath a supervising attorney. And I did that in my spare time so that I can build up the substantive experience to really show that I am competitive when I apply for a privacy role. And I ended up doing that. Even though, as I mentioned earlier, I do marketing for David, but I'm also the lead privacy attorney for the broker-dealer advisory business at JP Morgan Chase. And I was able to pivot into that role based off of the hard work that I put into it. And I'm super happy that I got to do this change, because I realized over time that litigation wasn't for me. And that's because of interests. I just no longer wanted it.
And I can add to that. So my what I initially started doing for my company when I moved in-house is completely different than what I do today. So I can't say that it was maybe a deliberate pivot, but I guess the point I'm trying to make is that almost no matter what you do, especially if you go in-house, there will be so much stuff thrown at you. And just as the evolution of technology goes on, you're going to have to learn new things no matter what. And so I started out basically being contract attorney for my company and negotiating, drafting contracts. And then slowly took over one compliance program after another. Started with the AML when that became very important in 2008, when a lot of banks were getting funds from the government, bailout funds, and government wanted to make sure that it's not being used for illicit activity. And so obviously everybody focused on AML and making sure that we actually catch suspicious activity, report it, and the money's not being used for that purpose. So AML became very important. I did the exact same as Nadine did. I joined the Association of Certified Anti-Money Laundering Specialists, got certified, learned it, and took that over. Then in 2015, GDPR came about with the European privacy regulation. Guess what I did? I joined IAPP, got certified in privacy, took that over. And now sanctions compliance with Russia invasion of Ukraine is very important. Guess what I did? I got certified in sanctions compliance, took that over. So point being, and right now I'm in the process of getting a crypto certification because crypto is becoming so huge in the financial services. So point being that even if you're not deliberately looking to pivot, inevitably with all the changes in society and technology, you're going to be required, frankly, throughout your life to keep adapting and learning new things. And I agree that best ways to network with people that are already doing that stuff or join associations, get certified, learn the material. I mean, I think one of the best things about law school isn't necessarily teaches you how to be a lawyer, but rather it teaches you that you can teach yourself anything, practically speaking. And that's the beauty of law school. You can do it.
Yeah, I just listening to y'all, Adrian and Nadine, it struck me the difference between subject matter knowledge and transferable skills. And and that really fits with the way my own career has worked within the government. I started as a medical malpractice defense lawyer. I've done consumer protection. I've done Medicaid fraud control. I've trained and advised law enforcement officers. And now I'm the litigation director for our bar counsel office. And all of those have different subject matters, but most of them involve the same set of skills. Can you write? Can you argue effectively? Can you learn quickly and teach other people what you learn? And eventually, can you manage and lead other people? So I've been in my job here since last September. I still am not as up to speed as I'd like to be with the subject matter, but what's getting me through is the skill, including the skill of learning a new subject matter and learning to apply it. It's a little bit different in the government, depending on what government entity you're in. There are so many, the government does so many different things, and the ability to transfer and move around and try different things once you're in the government structure is it's very nice. To talk about the state of Wisconsin for a second, it's much easier to move around the Department of Justice if you want to try criminal appeals law, for example, than to get hired as a criminal appeals lawyer with no previous criminal appellate background. But once you're in, you can ask for different types of experiences. You can you can work on your skills, and you can see how those skills transfer from area to area. And it's even more true with the federal government, which does many, many, many different things, as long as you're, open to relocation. So.
I also want to add one more thing that Francis mentioned. I believe that my pivot was easier because I'm in the same company. So if I had decided to go straight to a law firm doing privacy law, and just again, I'm 10 years out and I'm doing this pivot, it would be much harder, as opposed to I'm already in a place where people know me, they know my work practice, and I'm able to also take advantage. Again, like I said, I was able to do the nonprofit work for this for privacy through my company. So they already saw that I had the experience and knew what I was doing. It was a lot, I would say, easier to switch internally. And I'm also like familiar with like our internal lingo. So like the structure of how like the business works wasn't something I'm going to have to learn, as opposed to getting an external hire. So that also knowing like, oh, well, to get me up to speed is not going to take as long as somebody who's coming externally. So I would also add that too for when you're doing a pivot. That's like one perk of being in-house. You can.
These are all really important points. We have a few questions around this question. So do you guys have any advice for international students and LLM programs? Can you suggest places which would have more appetite for foreign trained lawyers?
I can address some of it because I'm a
Okay.
foreigner and an immigrant myself, but I wasn't foreign trained attorney. So I went to law school here, which does make things a lot easier when you have a degree from American law school. But you will be facing similar issues in terms of immigration issues. You do have to find a sponsor company or a firm that will sponsor you and get H-1B visa for you, which is a temporary work permit. And then you kind of progress from there to get a green card and then become citizen eventually. It's a very long process. But generally speaking, you are looking at the pool of your companies or firms that will be available to you would mostly be large companies and big law firms, because most of the smaller entities are just not going to get into all of these immigration issues, unfortunately. I was lucky that I had mentioned earlier that I did end up with a small law firm at the beginning, and I was very lucky. That's very unusual. Normally, small law firms or small companies are just not going to bother with it. So that's the unfortunate fact. But there is a way to do it, but you should be focusing on big law firms and big tech companies. They're all very familiar. They know what to do. And to some extent, yes, you will be, if you're a foreign trained attorney, you will be facing even bigger obstacles. But if you're doing LLM here in the US, I suspect that will be very helpful, because obviously you'll be having an American degree, even though it's not a law degree, it's a higher level degree. It's still, American degree. But that would be my advice, is to focus on large companies and big law firms who will be very familiar and know what to do in terms of how to sponsor you and how to get the required paperwork in place.
I also agree that for the pool, most likely, I'm just thinking of my colleagues here who are also foreign nationals, that it helps being at a big company that will sponsor you. So I wouldn't say that it limited your pool, but it will be easier to find a role within a large company. So I would say be on the lookout for different in-house roles and utilize the things we mentioned earlier to get in, depending on whether you're a recent grad or a few years out, of networking and leveraging what skill sets that you have.
I think it's very important generally to try and focus on what you do have rather than what you don't have. as a foreign law student, you have a set of skills and experiences that are very different from most attorneys in the United States. It may be a language skill, it may be a familiarity with a different culture or familiarity with a different legal culture. Think about where those things might be valued and start there.
Yes, it's all really great advice. I was going to say earlier that I think one thing that probably all of us enjoy about being a lawyer is that you're always learning. So no matter what area you practice, there's always new opportunities to find, different industries to learn about, different clients, different subject matter expertise, using your transferable skills into doing something different. And that leads into another question we have from a panelist, that there seems to be an advantage to specializing in a specific practice area early on. But for those of us who haven't had a lot of exposure to different areas of practice, how would you suggest gaining that exposure to figure out what would interest you? I think it's always important to reach out, work with different, if you're in a work with different partners and such, but it'd be interesting to see what the panel say.
Francis, you wanted to say something?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that as Nadine mentioned, you can volunteer. There are organizations out there that always need help. And they're in different areas and specialties of law. They're available that you can volunteer and try things out. But the beauty
I'll just speak for myself. I'm not sure I agree that there's a need to specialize. Yeah, I'm sorry. Are you all able to hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
You're going in and out.
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm not sure I agree that there's value in specializing right away, especially if you're someone who's
I don't think we can hear you, Francis. Can you hear him?
No.
We've lost you.
I can't hear him at all.
And he's frozen.
Yes.
work to the legal field. I think there's some to law school knowing exactly what they want to do.
That's actually better without the video.
Agreed.
Can y'all hear me now?
Not really.
Give me a couple minutes to move to a different location.
Well,
what do you say?
Francis, I can also opine on this. So it depends on the person. I personally, I don't believe you have to specialize in something in the beginning at all. Most people don't know what they want to do until you actually try it. Does it help? If you're really passionate about something and you love it, that's great that you found what's for you. But if you don't know, I don't think it'll be anything that's against you if you start off where you're doing something. I started off in employment law for literally 1 year. And then I went off to general litigation, doing primarily white collar securities litigation. So, and I haven't went back to employment law since. So I certainly it's nothing that's going to pigeonhole you if you don't know. If you switch early on, if anything, the switch early on will be seen better than in my switch, which was 10 years later, just because just also price rise, I'm not going to be on the same level as someone that's like junior, fresh out of law school. So I'm coming in at a higher price range, and because I have those transferable skills, and then on top of it, I'm still a novice to this new practice area. So I think that you take advantage of the flexibility you have being fresh out of law school to try new things. Especially when you realize, like, let's say you did start an employment law, and you're like, I don't like this. This is boring, which is perfectly fine. Then try something else. And I had mentioned earlier, like litigation was for me, but there was two perks of litigation. These perks were you get to do a variety of different types of litigation depending on the law firm you're in. So that definitely helps. That you could do, especially when you're at a big law firm, that's just not just like one area. And then the learning of something new because of the fact that if I may be on a securities case one day, or I may be pushed to an antitrust case one day when I was at the big law firm, I still had to use the resources that I've learned in and transferable skills I learned in law school of teaching myself something new. There was guidance because I was in a large law firm dynamic, but at the same time, I still also had to do the work to make sure that I retained this knowledge and I was able to apply it.
And I completely agree with that. In fact, I didn't specialize until like 8 years into my practice. So I did a general corporate transactional work at a law firm that I was with. And when I moved in-house, as I mentioned, I did contracts negotiations and just the general corporate work again. So I definitely agree that there's no need to specialize in the first few years of practice in anything, but in particular. And I think it would be to your advantage either through internships or through rotations with your own law firm to try out different things. I mean, again, the younger you are, the better it is to try out things. You're allowed to try out things at that time. 20 or 30 years later, might be a little bit too late, but even then, it's never too late to try anything new. But much easier to do at the beginning of your career.
Let me try again. Can you all hear me now?
Yes, much better.
I'm sorry about that. We've just moved into a new office. Our tech issues are intriguing. I think one of the advantages of practicing law in the government setting, especially in a larger municipal or county or state government, or of course the feds as well, is the opportunity to stick your fingers in so many different things. A state AG's office does a ton of work. Some of it's civil, some of it's criminal, some of it's administrative, some of it defies categorization. But when you're in a larger entity with a bunch of different responsibilities, you have the opportunity, especially when you're new, to sample, to ask, can I help out on this case? Not your unit, but my boss said it's okay if I come and do some civil discovery. That's always welcome because no one likes doing document reviews. But I think it's, unless you really know what you want to do and you're sure you know, I think you should be careful about specializing right out of the gate. There's so much more out there than you know about when you start. And there's so many different opportunities. And I think sometimes you need a little while to figure out who you are and what you can do and what you like to do and where you fit.
I also was going to add like new roles happen. Like when Kiana and I graduated, it was really more like to be a corporate attorney or to do litigation. Now there's so much more stuff that you can do outside of that. Like for example, if the rise of all the mega tech companies, there's now a product counsel. That did not exist when I graduated. So you don't want to also pigeonhole yourself from like new roles that are coming up because of the fact that you believe you should have to do like the standard what everyone else is doing. So I know we said it earlier, but I would reiterate, just be open because like I know for me when I learned about like, oh, product counsel is pretty cool because it's kind of a hybrid where you're representing product managers. So maybe you'll find the interest in something similar to that just hasn't been invented yet.
Yeah, if I could add one thing to that too, not only do new roles emerge, but old roles die off. Yeah. So I started out as a medical malpractice attorney, and Wisconsin revised its medical malpractice litigation scheme. And cut the number of medical malpractice cases down considerably, to the point where most of the ones that get filed now are the ones where you simply have drop dead liability and are arguing damages. That's not a good business model for a medical malpractice defense lawyer. And so even if you found the spot that you think is right for you, that spot may not exist in that form a few years down the line. And you always need to be open to new experiences and new roles and new things.
Yes, these are really important points. And to even relate to my own experience, I mean, I started in my private practice in ERISA litigation, and it wasn't something that I was very interested in. And I was able to move on to general commercial litigation, which I found to be more interesting. But yeah, it's important to always stay open because new roles will pop up. You know, I've done employment litigation as well. And, you know, also like Nadine, not all that interested. But there's, yes, always different roles, always new practice areas to learn, as, you know, social media and all these different things and cryptocurrencies and expand and have, you know, all these NFTs. I mean, that's like a whole new area of law that lawyers are encountering. I mean, there's like really no case law on how to operate an NFT and how to sell them. And there's all these infringement issues that come along with that. So there's lots of interesting areas of the law that you can get involved in and decide what your interests are. We have a few more questions also before we move on. When networking, after reaching out, what is the best way to maintain the relationship? And then this is a really important question on how to build a relationship with someone that you might not actually know.
I think one great way is once you learn more about that person, you know what they're interested in. You can kind of forward articles or events, invite them to the events that you see that might be of interest to them. Make sure right after you had a call with them to schedule another one to kind of keep the relationship going and not just be like, oh yeah, we'll touch base at some later point, because that later point will never happen. So I really feel like you should hit while the iron is still hot and schedule a next call, put it on a calendar, on both of your calendars. And just, yeah, that would be my way to do it, to forward anything that might be of interest to that person, invite them to those kind of events and to try to keep the relationship going.
Kiana, I just want to jump in. This has been amazing. We do have 5 minutes left, and I know all the panelists can't stay on past one. So I just wanted to not stop the conversation because we can go to the last minute. But I did want to just kind of put that flag up there, want to be respectful of everybody's time and commitments that come after this. I do also want to jump in. I know there's another LLM question. We are putting together a panel specifically for foreign trained LLM students. So it probably will be in September, but I wanted to just put that out there because I know that is important and again, requires and deserves a lot of attention. So wanted to mention that. And again, just thank everyone. So anybody who needs to jump off is great. The other one that I'm going to jump in and address is the question about contact information. The panelists are all on LinkedIn. Assuming they all nod, you can reach out to them there to connect, to ask any follow-up questions and engage directly rather than getting involved with posting conversation questions or contact information here. And then I guess, Kiana, I'll let you either wrap up or if anybody else wants to add on the maintaining a relationship question, because I know that's great. And I'm just going to let you guys finish up and just wanted to say thank you all again.
Yeah, let's just follow. How would you maintain a relationship? Because I think that is a really important question.
I think it's really important to make that relationship two-way. And Adriana was suggesting that, and I just want to make it explicit. You're in the relationship because you want something from the person you're in the relationship with. It's transactional, right? What do they want from you? what can you give them? What can you do that makes them happy and excited, intrigued when they see an email from you or get a call from you or a coffee invite or whatever? What do you have for them?
And I would add, because I'm still, even though I'm practicing 12 years out, I still have mentors. And what I personally do, I keep them in the loop of like what's going on career-wise, to let them know like, hey, I got the job, or I'm looking at like these different places, just to keep you like updated. So they don't go like, hello, stranger, when I do reach out to them. So it's important to keep in contact. You don't have to do something like every like week, but just like keep them on top of mind. Holidays are a good time to also remember to reach out. So sometimes I'll send like this nice email saying like whatever I may celebrate, or Happy New Year, just like I'm thinking of you and I haven't forgotten you, and I appreciate your mentorship.
Yes, I think that's all really great advice. I did have one last question for the panelists, and would there be any mistakes that you've learned from in your career journeys that you want to share with the audience today? That'd be the last point.
I guess I can
So
add, oops, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, for me, that's its own 2-hour seminar.
That's true. But I was just going to say, maybe be proactive. I think a lot of people make a mistake of kind of assuming that their bosses will be thinking about their career progression and what should be their next step, and they're too busy. So be proactive, be in charge of your own career, and think about what is it you want to do and what is the next step you want to take.
I would say even when it's tough, like I know I've been rejected from many jobs. I think a mistake was thinking like that was the only one for me. There's always something better that will come along. So it's just a reminder to know that like, no, that it's not the end, it will work out, and to not put all your eggs in one basket, because something better is coming.
Yeah, believe in yourself. Don't burn any bridges. And remember that nobody cares about your career more than you do. And act with that in mind.
I would say the same thing. Be intentional, be focused on your career development and what you need to get out of each job experience that you have.
Thank you all again so much. This has been terrific. Somebody asked for the full names. I did put them in the Q&A, but also they are available on the flyer that you used to sign up. So if you missed it, you can just go back to the promotional material, and everybody's full names and companies are there, and you can use that to find them. Or if you're connected with me or connect with me, I will get you everybody's name and contact information. So again, thank you everyone for joining us. This has been an absolutely wonderful panel, and have a great day. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, y'all. Bye.